Welcome back to episode 10 of the Save Our Sleep podcast.
So the next chapter is chapter 4. And so this is podcast episode
10.
10. And the next chapter is chapter 4. And we are talking about sleep and settling. And before we talk about sleep and settling, I want to talk about the fact that Save Our Sleep is a holistic approach.
Absolutely.
It is not about, you have a baby, the baby's not sleeping, let's put the baby in their cot and let them scream. Let's put the baby in their pram and let them scream. When and this, you had a note to ask me about this, and I'm going to talk about it now. When I had the hub in Packington Street, I loved the hub. The hub was a Save Our Sleep gift shop, come sleep shop, come place for people to come and hang. And we even had people who were older. We had old women who used to come.
You did too.
Mrs. Kelly left the hub one day to go and make the bed for a 96-year-old lady who couldn't get the sheets on her bed. We discovered that she had like a queen bed. She was putting them on sideways. Her husband had died and nobody was making her sheets and she couldn't get her bed made. And Mrs. Kelly, because it was the first time she was changing her sheets without her husband helping. And Mrs. Kelly left the hub, went with this lady to her house. She made her bed. Like, it was a lovely place. And I'm yawning because we're talking about beds and sheets and sleep, and I've started yawning. So, like in the bedding guide. No. So it's a holistic approach. So people used to come to the hub, and I want to tell you about one lady. She came to the hub and she sat and she had a cup of tea. And she was very upset because her baby was about 5 months old and had never, ever slept through the night. And I talked to her and I told her, and she was going to sleep school. And I told her I didn't think she needed to go to sleep school. I think she needed bedding. And I lent her the bedding. And she took all the bedding and she left with the lent bedding. Now I wash it, I sterilised, I make sure it's all good and it's not, and...
Can vouch for that, yes.
And I lend it. I always say to people when I lend it, don't you wash it, I'll wash it when I get it back. So there's no point you washing it because I will wash it again, even if you've washed it. So it can smell of Tizzie's laundry.
Which is yummy.
Yes. So I lent her the bedding. She came back the next day and she was like, thank you, thank you, thank you. I used the bedding and my baby slept all night for the first time ever. So when she said all night, she meant that her baby had slept from like 8 o'clock at night to her 6 o'clock in the morning. To me, that wasn't all night. All night to me is 7 to 7 with a dream feed. But she was so overjoyed. Her baby had slept from 8 till 6. I'm yawning.
We're going to have to stop talking about sleeping.
We're going to have to,
here.
yes, but we have to. It's a chapter on sleep. Anyway, so I might have to send Zoe out to the fridge to get me a Red Bull.
I can do that.
So. She left us, was going to her maternal health nurse, was then going to come back and purchase the bedding. That was her plan.
Yes.
Yeah. She never came back. Never came back. And I wondered what had happened to her. Well, then about a year later, she came back with her husband. No, she came back by herself with her mother-in-law.
Right.
And she was beside herself. She was getting up to her now 1-year-old 4 or 5 times a night. I would have told you this. Were you there? Did you work there at the time?
Yeah, I remember.
And it was awful. She was getting up and her mother-in-law just wanted to borrow the bedding again as an experiment. So we lent her the bedding, take 2. The next day, her husband came in and he was so upset. We had to calm him down. He was angry. He wanted to go round to the maternal health nurse. Now, some of them are good and some of them don't really understand what we do. Apparently, she'd gone to the maternal health nurse, said she'd used the bedding and the baby had slept all night. She was so excited. She'd gone into the maternal health nurse and gone.
With good news.
I used Tizzie's bedding. I borrowed it from the hub around the corner. My baby's, and the nurse said, you can't use bedding. You comatized your baby.
Yep.
You're going to overheat your baby. You comatized your baby.
Yep.
She'd given us the bedding back. She didn't use it again. She came back a year later,
what had happened.
or 9 months later or something. She borrowed the bedding. The baby slept all night. The dad is like, it cannot be a coincidence. I told him to take the bedding home for the rest of the week, use it every night. They are my biggest fans now. But
Good.
they were on their way to sleep school. Now, I would love to wind the clock back and have that little baby go. I mean, I wouldn't. I would never want the baby to go to sleep school.
No.
But if the baby went to sleep school, would they have just put that baby in the cot to the point where it cried, so much that it felt like nobody was coming and it just gave up and it just slept? Or would it have cried so much that it overheated and it vomited? Like, why are people not doing a holistic approach? When someone comes to our support group with anything, I'm sure people are bored by it, because you come to the support group and we say, what age is your baby? Was your baby premature or full term? What weight was your baby? Is your baby breastfed, bottle fed, breastfed with bottle fed with formula, bottle fed with breast milk? What bottles do you use? What teats do you use? What size do you use? Is the milk hot? All of these things affect. You shouldn't give your baby cold milk. Is the milk hot? Are you feeding your baby until they're full? Are you on probiotics and then breastfeeding? Is your baby on probiotics? Are you on antibiotics? Are you on antidepressants? We need to know all of this stuff.
Yeah.
It's not just put your baby in the cot and let them scream. We
In fact,
need...
that's the absolute last.
Yes.
Self-settling is the last step, which we will try our hardest to avoid. And I did not have to do it with my voice.
It's about getting the timings right and so on. So when a baby is born, when they are first born, they will just sleep and sleep. Sorry, Zoe, I think this is going to be very much a me talking at the moment.
Absolutely.
But
Yes,
this is sleep. This is my thing, yeah?
This is your thing.
So when a baby is born, they will sleep and sleep and sleep regardless, like unless they're starving hungry. But if they're full, they'll sleep. Even if they're not warm enough, they'll still sleep and sleep and sleep to a certain point, till about 8 weeks, yeah? Then they suddenly wake up when their needs aren't met. So, and then they need to sleep in blocks. And if their needs aren't met, it doesn't happen. So we've talked about that in episode 1 and 2. They need to be well fed. They need to be warm. But when they're first born, they will sleep like comatose sleep if those needs are met, and not sleep in sleep cycles. At 8 weeks, they start sleeping in daytime sleep cycles. Some people call it a leap. Some people call it a sleep regression. So what do we do at 8 weeks? At 8 weeks, we need to make sure that where you put them down to sleep and what you put them down to sleep in. So I introduce a safe sleeping bag at 8 weeks so that it can be introduced at 1 month. It can be introduced at a week old. Most people introduce it at about 8 weeks. I introduce that at 8 weeks so that their feet, if they have no shoes and socks, if they have no shoes, of course they have no shoes, if they have no socks on, the inside of the sleeping bag, please put down hair fornicae on your list for me to talk about so I don't go off subject. Try not to go off subject.
Hair
Fornicae, I'll know what it is.
Okay.
Hair tie, hair, I'll know what it is.
Okay.
Fornicae, hair fornicae. So you put them in bed, no socks on, they might have a bundler or a baby grow without feet, and they can feel the inside of the sleeping bag. Very important that you buy a sleeping bag that you can use from aged 8 weeks through to when you take them out of a sleeping bag, which could be 4, 5 or 6 years old. You need to buy a sleeping bag where the inside will always feel the same. Often sleeping bag companies have a different feel to the inside depending on the tog, and there will be a different, they will have one and then you'll go back to buy the bigger size and it's changed. Make sure you get one where they're not going to change it. Of course, I'm going to say.
Why? I want to know why.
Oh, sorry.
I'm saying this.
Yes. It was talked about in the bedding guide, which you haven't evidently
okay.
listened to. So the bedding guide is really important. We have a bonus episode called the bedding guide. So I don't bore you in every episode. Do yourself a favor. Listen to the bonus episode, the bedding guide. Okay. Because some children have sensory, don't know whether it's immunizations, don't know whether it's the way we are. I do not know what the cause is. But maybe we're more in tune with our babies. Maybe we have more time for our babies. But in modern day society, more babies have sensory issues. We have more autism, more Asperger's. Is it more diagnosed? Is that why we have more? Okay, don't know. But what I do know is some children don't like the change, the feel of the rub of the fabric on their toes if it changes. For example, when my children were little, there was a 0.5 tog sleeping bag, which felt the same as a 0.2.5, but the 1 tog, which was a different brand to mine, had a toweling inside. My children didn't like it. With the Save Our Sleep sleeping bags, what you don't realise, you as the client, did you know that my 0.5 are 2 layers of shirt fabric? My 2.5 are 2 layers of shirt fabric with a fluffy filling. but you can't feel the fluffy filling.
Mm-hmm.
My One Tog is the most expensive sleeping bag I make because I put a layer of really expensive cotton toweling inside to make it One Tog with the layering, but then I still put the shirt fabric on top. So it's like it's got this beautiful velour inside that you can't feel. And that's the expensive part. But that's because you can't let the baby feel it because it might become they're going to sleep aid.
Sure.
Am I making sense?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. So at 8 weeks, they start daytime sleep cycles. And you will see catnapping during the day. How do you avoid this? You avoid it by not letting them suck on a dummy. Sucking on a dummy causes their digestive system to work too fast and they fall asleep sucking on the dummy, and then they need the dummy to get from one sleep cycle to the next. We will talk about dummies more in the dummy section further on, but that's your main reason. If you rock them to sleep and then put them down in their cot or pram or cot or bassinet or snoo, wherever they sleep, or even if you use a snoo which rocks them to sleep, what happens then if you get older and you can't use it? Stop using it by 8 weeks, I would say. Yeah. Okay? So the last thing they are thinking of when they fall asleep is what they need to get from one sleep cycle to the next. Right. So I say use a comforter. We should have brought comforters. Yeah. Use a comforter. And lots of people on my Facebook group and support and on Instagram have 2 comforters. Why? I think it came from back years ago. We used to have a forum and people used to suggest in there to use 2 comforters when kids are like 10 or 11 months and they're throwing them out of the cot. That's different. That's when they're looking for their comforter in the middle of the night. Now, again, some people say, oh, Tizzie Hall, all it's about is making profit. Well, why would I not be saying, but have 6 comforters in your cot then? Because that would be more money. Sure. Everywhere you go, you'd have to carry 6 comforters. Yeah. If you use 2 comforters, then you will need 2 comforters in your change bag, 2 comforters in your pram, 2 comforters in the washing basket, 2 comforters in the cot. No. At first, before they are unwrapped, you only need 1 comforter. Unless you have a child who likes to lick the comforter, you might end up needing to. But try not to introduce a second at first. Okay?
I think it's a good idea to rotate too. Because if you lose one, then the other ones...
Yes, but no.
Yep. Okay.
Zoe is right. It's a great idea to rotate 2. But what happens if you lose 1? And you've rotated 2?
Yes. Yeah? Yes.
Then you buy a new one and your child doesn't accept it because it feels different.
That's what I mean.
Yeah.
So hopefully...
you can't rotate 2. You have to rotate 6.
Oh, well, yeah.
And that's why we...
of course.
That's why we have... That's why we have the packs where the more you buy, the less they cost. So, sorry, we're talking about comforters now. On the comforters there's a tag. I'm lost and if found. So if you lose your comforter, contact us because more people contact us. Now, I have a theory on that. If somebody owns 1 comforter and they lose it, they realise they've lost it. People who buy 15 or 16 comforters, which they do, we have people who buy 15 or 16 comforters, because they've got so many, they never realise that they've lost one. But what's the better way to do it? Do you buy 15 at first and rotate them on, and then you never worry, and eventually you get down to 1, and eventually it's gone? Okay, I would always, if you can afford it, I would recommend you have 6. You can buy them on our second-hand page because some people buy them and don't use them and they're still brand new on the second-hand page. Although I do find it funny when people say on the second-hand page, I'm selling a brand new comforter never used and the knots are open, because if it's never been used, how's the knot open?
Sure.
So there's a tip when you're buying off the second-hand page. Or if you're selling, shut the knots so Tizzie doesn't think it's actually been used. Anyway, I would put 1 comforter in and then they get used to that. Yes. If they're wrapped, you can use the comforters from 0 to 6 months. Okay, we'll talk about it more on the comforter topic, not now.
Sounds good.
8 weeks, daytime sleep cycles. About 6 months, we start to see the first nighttime sleep cycles, where they start waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning first, or maybe 9 o'clock at night. They'll have either let's say your baby's first nighttime sleep cycle is 5 o'clock in the morning. So you put them to bed at 7 and they wake at 5 in the morning. Then 6 weeks later, they go to bed at 7, they wake at 9 and 5. Then 6 weeks after that, 7, 9, 11 and 5, okay? So as they get older, the nighttime sleep cycles start, okay?
Yes.
So you need to make sure how you put them to bed is...
how they'll find themselves when they awake.
Exactly. So when they wake up between sleep cycles, everything needs to be exactly the same as it was when they went to bed. Now, this is where bedtime rituals is the next thing in this chapter. Let's talk about a 2.5-year-old or a 3-year-old, yeah? If you take them into their bedroom, put them into bed and start reading them a story, and you won't even notice, you do not notice that they get drowsy while you're reading them the story. You don't notice. It's like they fall asleep. So you leave the room after reading the story and they fall asleep. But when they wake up in the middle of the night, they don't remember that they were left alone. They remember that you were sitting there reading the story and they want that nice, happy feeling back.
Yeah.
So this is why we say do your wide awake time 20 minutes before bed. So do your nice story. Yes, when they get older, do stories at bedtime in their bedroom.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if you find that they're waking during the night and needing you, then the first thing I would do is cut back that bedtime ritual and make sure that they're not falling asleep with you
whatever you're doing
in the room, that they're not getting that
Singing
drowsy,
or
falling
cuddling,
asleep. So I say, so lots of people say, oh, you've got to wind them down and give them a massage and get them sleepy and have dark rooms and last feed. I'm the opposite. I'm like, you want the most important thing you can teach your child is the skill of sleep. I believe, just from looking at Nathan when we go travelling, that his mum must have rocked him or patted him or fed him or cuddled him to sleep, right? Because he is so jealous because we get on an airplane, boom, I'm asleep. I can get up in the middle of the night, go to the kids, come back into bed, asleep.
Oh, that's amazing.
I can get up and
must have been rocked to
answer
sleep
10
too.
emails and come back and go straight to sleep. He can't. So and I was, of course, the third child. Actually, my parents had always had extra children, the same as Nathan and I, which is always confusing as to how many was in our family. We always had lots of cousins around as well. So my mum, and my mum was grieving. Like when I look back in my childhood, like she had lost a baby, and that was really hard back then because do you know that when they lost a baby to cot death, they had to go to the police station because it was guilty of smothering your baby and you had to prove yourselves innocent? Like how awful's that?
It's just horrible.
So, so teach your babies how to sleep. So bedtime ritual is really important. And then how long we sleep. Like that's, so like, a newborn will sleep, 15 to 17 hours. And then by the age of 3, they'll need to sleep 13 hours in a time frame. I won't bore you with that. It's in the book. We're not going to discuss that now. Bathing your baby. Look, I don't shower babies. I bath babies. Babies don't like the shower. They've got to try and close their airways when they're in the shower in case you put their face under it. And do you ever go in the shower and you are in the shower as an adult? This happens very rarely, but it does happen. As an adult, you're in the shower and you breathe in the water and it burns. Has that ever happened to you?
Don't think so.
But
I shower a bit funny because I can't get water in my ears and I don't want my hair to get wet. So I've usually
do you remember as a child being thrown in a swimming pool?
Well, again, can't get water in the ears, so no.
No, I remember being thrown in and that.
Yeah,
so do it. Breathe in the water. It's horrible. It gives you this horrible burning sensation. And a lot of parents shower their children, babies, and they don't like it. Like they think, oh, it's lovely, and they have a shower with dad. And if you do it and whatever, it's fine. And I'm not saying it's the end of the world, but I just put yourself in the baby's. Put yourself in the baby's shoes. They have no control. They don't in the bath either, but at least they're not breathing in the water. So
babies. Oh gosh, every baby I've ever met enjoys a bath. It is soothing and calming and quite often something that you can do if you've tried everything and baby's not stopping crying. You put them in the bath and they just
and put
a nice way to end the day.
Or burpers over the baby in their first bath. So we really don't want to. We don't need to talk about bathing and stuff. So we're talking about sleep and settling. So we're skipping forward. If you want to know about the bathing, read it in the book. But bathing is very important. Swaddling. So swaddling your baby is very, very important. Do not swaddle your baby in a swaddle where the arms are up by sort of at your ear height or even at your shoulder height and there's a zip up the front. Now, if you even think back to 5 years ago, maternal health nurses did not tell you to stop wrapping your baby at 8 weeks because those swaddles were not common. Did you know that if a baby is in a dangerous swaddle and rolls to their tummy and passes away, the swaddle's not taken off the market? A certain amount of babies it has to happen to. they're not safe. Like,
Mm.
what, have we got to wait for X amount of babies to have an accident in these swaddles before they get taken off the market? Will they even get taken off the market? Yes, they are safe from 0 to 8 weeks. But after that, they're not safe, especially if you don't use the right amount of bedding. But my thing is, why would you swaddle a baby in something for the first 8 weeks that you need to take away and then change to something else?
Yep, good point.
Would you do that? Why would you do that?
I don't know.
But people do that.
I think it comes back to the bit where we think because we might not feel comfortable having our arms down like this, you think that your baby's not. So you think that somehow that's more comfortable, but actually, like sleeping a whole night like that,
Try it.
probably not that.
I ask all of my clients, readers, and friends to get into bed and try sleeping with your hands up like that. Up, your hands bent. You'll have to look at the YouTube clip to see, but your hands bent. It's not good. Like, why would you do that? I don't know. I swaddle with a stretch jersey, double wrap swaddle, and you put their arms across their chest. Babies like it, and they have good hip movement. It's really, really important that the swaddle you use is the Save Our Sleep double wrap. No, that's not what I was going to say. It's really important that the swaddle you use allows good hip movement. We need hip movement. While I'm talking, Zoe, don't forget you need a question for in a few minutes from a reader. You have got a question. Yep. Good. Okay. So swaddling plays a really, really important part of teaching your baby to sleep. You need to swaddle your baby, and we would recommend you swaddle your baby with a stretch jersey swaddle so that you can use it right through to about 9 or 10 months old. Now, sleeping aids. What's the difference between a sleeping aid and a comforter? So a sleeping aid what's the difference between a good aid and a bad aid? So a sucking your thumb might be classed as a bad aid. Some people think it's not good.
I think it's okay because it doesn't involve parent intervention.
Yes. So some people think it's not good because they can damage their nail.
Of course.
They can damage their teeth.
Yeah, of course.
And then at some point you need to retrain the brain to not need to suck to sleep. So that's interesting. I don't know if sucking your thumb fingers should be good or should be bad. It's not, you don't need your help. So they don't need your help to get the thumb in the middle of the night. So is it good? Is it bad?
I think ultimately it's not the best habit for a human being to get into. And I've known teenage boys that still suck their thumbs.
And especially when they're tired.
Yes, especially when they're tired or feeling anxious or something like that. My boys actually suck their thumbs. So it's not a healthy habit, and it would definitely be very germy. But as far as not requiring a parent to come in and put a fallen out thumb back in the mouth and getting a good night's sleep and being able to self-soothe, I think it'd be fair to say.
So a dummy, you should, if you look at a dummy packet, you should never ever leave a child unattended with a dummy because they can bite the end off and choke. You can't choke on your thumb; they're not going to bite the end off. So, so is sucking thumbs good or bad? Jury's out on that.
Sure.
Some dentists say don't let it. Some dentists do, but if you wrap your baby, you're going to eliminate the sucking, which isn't ideal if they've been in the womb and they've always sucked their thumb in your womb, and then they've come out and you're wrapping them and they can't suck. But the younger they are, the easier it is to retrain the going to sleep pathways from awake to asleep. So we don't know if a dummy is a good aid or a bad aid. We know sucking on a dummy. We don't know if a thumb. Yep. We don't know if a thumb is a good aid or a bad aid. We know sucking on a dummy is a bad aid because at some point your child has to give that dummy up. Now, it does all sorts of things. Dummies affect your speech. So if you go back and look at me, there was a show in Australia called the Kerry-Ann Kennelly Show, and I got the last word, and I've never been on, she doesn't do the shows anymore, but they told me I was never coming back because I got the last word, because I was explaining on that interview, which you can find on YouTube, that a child who sucks on a dummy, child who sucks on a dummy used to be, it was called a dummy. So in Ireland, it's called a dodie. And in America, it's called a pacifier. And in Singapore, sometimes it's called a comforter. And in Australia, they're called dummies. And in the UK, they're called dummies. And I think it comes from the fact that they worked out that children who sucked on a dummy had delayed speech.
Mm.
Now, when you look at a baby who's lying in a cot sucking on a dummy, they're lying there going suck, 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 suck.
Yes.
When you look at a baby who's lying in a cot without a dummy, they're moving their head, going mum, 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 da, da, da,
Yes. What a good
da,
point.
da, 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 da,
Yes.
and they're practicing their speech. So
Yes.
that's one issue. Now, on the Kerry Ann Kennelly show, she said, so basically, Tizzie, you're saying children with dummies are dumb.
Oh.
And I just went,
No.
no. And you're not supposed to. And then they go cut. And the rule is that when they go cut, it's cut. Yeah? So that's how she was ending the show. And if you watch it, it's really funny because I go, no, that is not what I said. I said, and I kept talking. And you're not supposed to do that. And we ran over time. Well, she was cheeky, ending it, trying to make out that I said that. And I didn't say that. I was talking about research. So that's right. So dummies. Dummies also can fall on the ground, get dirty. And then licking the dummy on your... Some people say it's not good to suck the dummy and then put it in your child's mouth because you're moving some mouth bacteria. Okay, you'll have to look into that. I'm not the expert. At some point, they fall out in the middle of the night. You've got to go in and replace them.
I couldn't stand that.
Some people say, I had a dummy and I never went in at night. Well, you realise that those kids weren't dependent on the dummy because the parents didn't go in and they learned to use something else to fall asleep. Also with the dummy, at some point, you need to take it away. Like if they want to go away in school camp in year 3, they're not going to want a dummy. But that's mean. Like taking it away is mean, you know? And then sometimes you can't buy the same one. Now, in special care, I went in and they'd given one of my children a dummy. I think it was Dara. And I was really upset. And yes, it was Dara. And to this day, I believed it ruined his breastfeeding because I didn't want him having a dummy. And I went in and he had a dummy. And I've talked about this before. It was very much them and me, they and me. And I felt like he wasn't my baby. And I felt like I didn't know about premature babies in hospital and how they had to be looked after. And I had to do what I was told to do. And I was told he needs a dummy to learn how to suck.
Right.
But I soon realised that he was sucking and getting no milk. And then by the time he came out to feed out of the humidity crib, isolate to feed, he'd no energy.
Yeah.
He'd used all the energy sucking and didn't get rewarded. So is that a bad thing that they suck, suck, suck and get no reward? And the pet hate, we always talk about my pet hates, is you're sitting at a cafe and there's a baby and the mum's breastfeeding the baby. And look, if you're comfortable breastfeeding in public without a shawl, just do it. Like I find it really hard. There was a clip on one of the TV shows, was it Sunrise, that was going around Instagram or Facebook? And this poor lady had a screaming baby. And I was thinking, why aren't they saying, let's just pause for a second, get the baby on the boob. It was clearly a breastfed baby. Get the baby on the boob and then start talking again. Like, why was this Koshi guy talking over this moment? And I know everyone was going, oh, it's Mother's Day and it's funny and it's great and it's real mothering and real parenting. But I was just thinking, real mothering, I'm sure I wasn't the only person sitting there going, put the baby on the boob, put the baby on the boob. Real mothering and parenting is getting your boob out if you've got a breastfed baby and it's feed time. Clearly it was feed time. And it was so sad that I would have.
Couldn't do that. Yeah.
It was, and why couldn't she just say, can you just pause the recording for a second?
Sure.
I'm like you did on the last podcast. Just pause. I'm going to the toilet. Or just, okay. So this business of you go to a cafe and you see a baby and it's been fed and then the mum stops feeding it, be it the bottle or the breast, and the baby is screaming and they put a dummy in. The baby's screaming because it's hungry. Why? It's like, imagine if you were crying because you wanted something and someone just came along and shoved a dummy in your mouth and didn't let you talk. So I'm saying a dummy is not a good sleep aid. Now, a comforter is a good sleep aid because if you put hey, here's a little thing. How about everybody who is listening to this podcast on sleep and settling, if it is your very first time listening, or if it's going to be your very first time purchasing from Save Our Sleep, put a promo code in, what will we make the promo code? Pod10.
Okay.
Yep.
What are they going to get?
And we will send you a free comforter.
Hmm.
Only if it's your very first time purchasing from us. So it has to be, and you have to spend over $100. Here's the rules. Spend over $100. It's your first time ever purchasing from Save Our Sleep, and put POD10, POD10 as a promo code, and we will send you out a free comforter with your order. Okay?
That's very generous of you. Thank you.
Yeah, they're actually $33.99. So it's a good, generous gift. And first time purchases, normally you get this as well. May put a free set of spoons in, my curved spoons. We'll talk about those later.
Okay.
So, comforter is good because you can put it down your top, let it smell of you, get it down your top, get it smelling of you. Have, if you can afford it, 6 of them on rotation.
Yes.
Always one in the cot, one in the wash, one in the change bag, one at Granny's house, one in the glove. But I have emergency ones now in the car in case we have to go into hospital because of, I always think, what happens if we're in a car crash and we don't have our comforters? So I have an emergency bag that the kids don't know about. And I offered one to a lady in Geelong, and she must think, why should she give me a dirty comforter? It was like, she contacted us going, I need a comforter, and it was the right one. And I'm like, oh, Nathan's near your house. He could lend you our one. She was like, no, I'll drive out and buy a new one. It was like, oh, they are clean. Like, I wash them. But anyway, so comforters, you can put them in on your top, get them to smell of you, put them next to baby. The baby can turn, can smell you. It's something that the baby can use
independently
as a sleep cue, a sleep aid. If they've got to go to daycare, they can have their comforter. Their first day of school, their comforter can be in their school bag. Kieran had his comforter in his school bag for Kinder 2. We do Kinder 2 at Geelong College. Kinder 2, Kinder 3, Kinder 4, and prep. And now it's not in his bag, I noticed. So, and then we'd COVID and he wasn't at school. Now it's not in his bag. So they like to have them in their bag. And the other thing is they help with flathead syndrome. So, that was what the Royal Children's Hospital contacted.
Right.
So a lady from the Royal Children's Hospital contacted me and said, I am right, that the mattresses that are soft and firm do help to stop the cot head syndrome.
Oh, great. Okay.
The flat head syndrome, which is in one of our podcasts.
Great.
I kept asking Zoe, what was that note about? It's about the fact that we have a sheepskin under cotton. So when you're looking for a cot mattress, try and get one that's got sheep's wool between the mattress and the cotton top, because it helps you to avoid flat head syndrome. Because it gives a softness, which is what they used to use. But it's not made in a way, it's been stretched. It hasn't been made so if the baby rolls, they're going to suffocate. Like, you cannot put them on a sheepskin for that reason.
Of course.
Sorry for going off topic. But comforter. You put the comforter on one side and then you move it to the other side, and then that helps you to avoid flat head syndrome.
Fantastic.
Okay?
Yep.
So, good aids, bad aids.
Yes.
So, rocking, dummy, comforter is good aid, rocking, dummy, patting, they would all be bad aids. People will say, well, why, Tizzie, with your settling advice, do you say to leave the baby for a certain amount of minutes, which we'll talk about in the next podcast or when we get to it in the book? But then you're saying that's a bad aid, because the idea is if you leave your baby to have a bit of a yell for a few minutes, then you come in and pat them. Eventually they realise, well, mum's just going to pat me to sleep, or they get used to going to sleep at that time and they start falling asleep in the first few minutes, and the patting does not become an aid. So, comforters. Now, Luke's story very quickly. Oh, we've got a Luke story. And it's not named after your Luke.
No.
So Luke's story, we better just finish talking about comforters for a minute before we move on, before we end. Otherwise, we'll be starting on that in podcast 11. So Luke's story, I'm not going to look at it in the book, but I'm pretty sure it's when people had gone out to the house, we'd got the baby sleeping, he'd been sleeping, he'd slept every night for about 4 or 5 months, and suddenly he wasn't sleeping and we couldn't work out why, and he'd go to bed and he'd cry emotionally, and I am telling you this, I'm yawning because I'm talking about going to sleep and I'm yawning. I actually haven't had my coffee yet for the day. So
You haven't,
no. So I'm telling you this from memory, so it might not be exactly what's in the book. But so he was crying emotionally. In the end, I crawled in and noticed he was like rubbing his cuff, like he was bending his fingers down. And I realised he was in short-armed pajamas, and he was using the sleeve of his pajamas as his comforter.
That was his way.
So it's really important that every child finds something to fall asleep with. And what they find to fall asleep with
They
is
have every
their
time.
comforter.
Yes.
And if you don't know what their comforter is, then you can't give it to them if they're in hospital or in a plane, or you want them to sleep in the pram. So it's really important you know what the comforter is. And then tricks of the trade, well, we have said, put it down your top, get it smelling of you.
Yeah, lovely.
Get one if you know before your baby's born. We always know the sex of a lot of babies at Save Our Sleep before anyone else does, because a lot of mums now find out what flavour the baby is, and then they choose the comforter, pink or blue or whatever, depending on the flavour of the baby.
Yes.
And we know, and we're very good at keeping secrets, but you can
Great.
have them, prepare them, wash them.
Yeah.
I love baby photos. Oh, the other thing you can do to get a little prize is if you share a video on our Instagram page, just our Instagram page. If you share a video on the Instagram page of you unwrapping your baby where they do this amazing stretch, we will give you a $30 gift voucher for Save Our Sleep. So you share a video of your baby stretching and we give you a $30 gift voucher.
Cute.
Only because that gives me,
Joy.
I'm paying you $30 for a happy, fuzzy feeling of watching the stretch.
Lovely. Yeah.
I love the stretch. Love. And you can do it 10 times and get yourself a mattress. How's that? Share it 10 times on Instagram and get $300 for a mattress. So, tricks of the trade is, now the other thing about comforters is when your baby is about 10 months old, they will throw it out of the cot for the first time.
Yes.
Because they don't want to go to sleep. And Nathan came to me once and said, Darren's thrown his comforter out, what do I do? And I said, read the book. At exactly 10 months, they throw it out.
Wow.
It's interesting. And what you do is the first time you give it to them and then you leave it out. So the first time they do it, you just go in and give it to them. But if they start doing it at every bedtime, you do not give it to them for a few minutes. You let them actually get upset and realise it's not coming back. Then you go in. Well, you tell them as well.
Yeah.
But you say to them, if you throw your comforter out, well done, Zoe. Yes, you talk to them. If you throw your comforter out tonight, I'm not coming back in and giving it to you. You'll have to go to sleep without it. And then you
follow through.
Well, you might say, it will not be coming straight back in because mummy's got to go and wash the dishes or something, so that you can go in and give it back to them when they've realised it's not coming back. But yeah, and then the third time, you don't go back, you don't give it to them. They have to learn that they threw it out. Their choices, actions and consequences. And the earlier you teach your children actions and consequences, the better. It's really important. You can teach them actions and consequences from day one. The action is their choice and the consequence is. And I'm a big believer in, if your child takes crayons and draws on the wall, do not lose your cool with them, because they didn't know it was wrong.
No.
How do they know it's wrong until they've done it and you've told them it's wrong? The second time they draw on the wall, then you can put them in the thinking place to think about their action.
100%.
Not the naughty corner, not the naughty chair, the thinking spot, which is in the toddler book. But we won't talk about that now. It's in the toddler